have any idea where we are?
I haven't the least idea in the world.
We've come to ask for shelter. We've lost our way.
Rachel had this room once. She died when she was 21. Bless thou, Lord, this is the house may they reprove a host mankind. Amen.
Whose life? I suppose it's a storm.
I've got a funny feeling something dreadful might happen to us.
There's a madman upstairs.
You shouldn't have come here.
Hello again, everybody, and happy Halloween. I know a bit premature to say it. I know this is early in the month, but I can't help it. I love Halloween. Everything about it. The atmosphere, the candy, I admit, the haunted houses. I love it all. But the one thing I can't deny I love more than anything else, even on a casual level, I love the movies. You feel like it really gets you into the spirit of things. And I thought to myself, there are so many that I still have yet to see. And in fact, there's a lot that people still haven't seen. For every Friday in October, I am going to bring each of my fellow collaborators on Rare Delicacies to bring in a horror movie of their choice. And who knows, the movies they bring might be something classical and gothic. Alternatively, it could be just manic and blood splattered. It could be satirical. It could be absolutely off the wall insane. But for our first one, we want to keep it special. We want to make it classic. And I couldn't think of anyone better to bring this to us than our good friends at...
What's poppin', everybody? I'm Kay. This is Pip. We're both from Review and Brew, and it's a delight to be on your show.
Yeah, we love being featured here on Rare Delicacies and introduce you to some of the not so often seen movies that we love.
As delighted as you are to be back, we are delighted to have you back. So what do you have for us today?
We have for you something great for Halloween, The Old Dark House.
Very nice, reaching all the way back. And not just are you reaching back, you're reaching back using a film from a great filmmaker who has made some of the most influential horror films of the bygone age and bringing us something that most people probably don't talk about. So this I'm very excited to see.
Another really fun fact, this younger woman, the actress is the same actress that played Rose in Titanic.
Let's talk about Boris Karloff. Boris Karloff is a great actor. He's world-renowned for good reason, and his role in this film is really interesting because as rich of a voice as Boris has, he doesn't talk in this movie at all. It's all emoted.
Mm-hmm. He mostly mumbles, if anything. I don't even know if that was his voice or if it was ADR after. But this was one of his earlier films shortly after Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people wouldn't even recognize him because of such great makeup back in Frankenstein.
Right.
That in the beginning of Old Dark House, there was a title scroll saying like, Boris Karloff plays this guy, just to make sure people knew.
We promise this is actually Boris Karloff. And he did a really, really good job in that role.
If you didn't tell me that was him, I probably wouldn't have recognized him. So that disclaimer, I appreciate the disclaimer. So let's just jump right into The Old Dark House.
Let's get right into it, shall we?
Now, admittedly, my exposure to James Whale has been brief. I did see Frankenstein, like any good film fan should. And I will say, I think I actually like this one a bit more.
One thing I really like about older movies in general is there's no CGI. So the director has to be really creative with how he gets across the feelings he wants the audience to feel. And this is a horror movie, so the director wants them to feel on edge or uneasy. And since there's no CGI, he has to be pretty clever. So what does he do? He uses shadows.
The story of the film goes like this. A posh couple of people whose relationships are a bit vague in the beginning, of course get caught in a very, very nasty storm. A storm so nasty, in fact, that a rock slide occurs, blocking off their trail. And of course, as this always goes, they end up in the title character, the Old Dark House. if I didn't know better, I swear these houses get built always in places that you're always going to find people getting caught off the beaten track and forcing them to have to seek refuge. And I love how they always have the nerve to act surprised that this is the situation that's going to turn up. In any case, these people are exceptionally sympathetic and very accommodating and take them in for the night, even in lieu of the fact that they have very obvious secrets going on in this house.
There's some really interesting lighting techniques. There's one scene in particular where this young woman is making shadow puppets on the wall. And creeping up next to her, only in shadow, is this silhouette of an older lady about to strangle her. And that's representing a memory that she's having earlier of when this old lady was berating her just for being young, beautiful, and sinful. And that scene used some clever effects as well, because it was shot totally through these mirrors. And they were like old, distorted images.
Right, so you have this image of the beautiful young woman, but right next to her is a reflection that's just off enough to make her seem like a monster. Mm-hmm. And you see the old woman's reflection, and that's warped and distorted, and she looks even more terrifying. The faces kind of remind me of that one Twilight Zone episode, where like everyone's face is just like... It was really creepy, and the director did a great job. What in this film creeped you out?
As much as I love horror films, very few of them ever get me so uneasy where I'm freaking out. Now, if you want to ask me what I think was effective and what I could probably imagine was effective for the film goers back in 1932, I think the thing that really worked for me was this ever-present sense of dread. The idea that even though Horace and Rebecca, so I like that they're very forthcoming about who they are, how they feel about all these characters coming into their house. Because they're forthcoming with the details, it actually builds this escalating sense of dread as to what else these people might discover in this house. And what's even more fascinating that I found with the way it all pays off is that you actually are given this sense of where is this going to go? I legitimately did not know how this was going to resolve. Was this going to end with all these people just getting destroyed by the secrets of this house? Or in fact, are they going to make it out of this? The people who do make it out of this event, they feel profoundly changed by it. Now, while I do feel the film does build up to Saul clearly being the biggest menace of them all, and to his credit, he is menacing pretty much from the minute you meet him, I love the scene where Pendrell's trying to talk him down or just trying to get him into a position where he can subdue him. That scene is rife with genuine tension because you get this impression based on the build-up when people were talking to the old man in the attic or anyone else around him who just always seemed to want to flinch at the mention of Saul. The build-up is definitely worth it because the second you meet him, he is just twitchy, he is always on edge, and you've had this feeling that he's going to do something legitimately horrible, and it pays off fantastically so.
In fact, a lot of the actors, I feel, did a pretty dang good job. You have the old man upstairs, this 102-year-old androgynous guy, and it's really good. What characters did you like?
Frankly, the entire cross-section, I was absolutely receptive to. I really liked that each and every one of them was a distinct character all their own, and none of them felt like a clone of the others, especially characters like Gladys or Margaret. I was worried about that, but this movie was very rich in its characterization that all of them stood out on their own terms. Even characters who are only on screen for one scene, in particular, Sir Roderick. In fact, the character is played by a woman named Elspeth Dudgeon. It was a fascinating choice having a woman play this geriatric, wizened, convalescing old man, and hearing the voice, I was going, that sounds like a woman's voice. And normally in situations like this, they would usually try to mask it, but it was a very wise choice having this woman play it and not try to disguise its feminine features because it really played up the wizened nature of this man. And even more so, it played up the inhuman nature of whatever this person was to what he's becoming. And I was kind of hypnotized. In that one scene the character appears, I was hypnotized because I was pondering the character's history and what led to this inevitable state that the character landed in. It was fascinating to find this much subtlety in unconventional casting and presentation, and the fact that it all happens in just one scene makes it a total standout. And again, because of the brief span this movie has, I was worried that it may have been overcrowded, particularly when Sir William and Gladys show up just out of the blue. At least with the other characters, we had this build-up with them. We see them as they arrive. So then all of a sudden out of the blue, oh hey, here's 2 more characters. I was worried it may get too crowded. But the movie still takes its time with them.
Absolutely. On base level, it's a simple idea. You go to a house, there's something weird going on, you're witness to some stuff, things get resolved, people leave, people are happy. But on the character levels, there's layers. You think of Sir William Porterhouse, and he comes out with this story, his whole backstory of his life, how he's trying to fit into this wealthy society. His wife happens to wear a cotton dress, which I guess wasn't in at the time, and that destroyed her because people kind of shunned her just for wearing the wrong dress.
Right.
And his wife dies, and he ends up becoming this wealthy person, constantly finding work and trying to succeed and put down all these other people. Like,
it's this huge backstory that it's not necessary, but they work it in such a good way.
And it's fascinating.
It really is. Like, every character seems alive. Well, most of them seem alive. And it's just, it works really, really well. You feel for each of these characters. They all have their own motivations. It's not tropey, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Nothing is predictable.
Now, if you were to ask me which character was I rooting for the most, I was actually rooting for Pendrell. I like the fact that he was very charming. I like that he was an optimist. I like the fact that he was always willing to try to make the best of a bad situation. And while it is old Hollywood, the whole love at first sight thing and how after the span of one night, they want to get married, you still were rooting for both him and Gladys to an extent. I actually did find their love story very sweet. I did like the chemistry that the two had together. And to the credit of the way this film was written, I like the fact that Pendrell, turned out to be the primary focus in the climax of it, and I was legitimately hoping for him to come out on top. So when it comes to character investment, mission accomplished.
One thing I found kind of neat was that the family that lives in the mansion, they're pretty divided for a multitude of reasons. But the one I found fascinating was on the topic of religion. You have Rebecca, who is very religious, and she's very accusatory when Horace, the older guy, he doesn't pray before the meal, and he starts mocking her. So he very clearly wants nothing to do with this. He thinks it's all hocus pocus.
To thank them for the health and prosperity and happiness granted to this family, for its years of peace and plenty. To thank them for having created Rebecca for him, and Roderick for him, and so... Stop!
Bless thou, Lord, visit the house, may they reprove a wholesome healing remedies of mankind. Amen.
And then you have Saul, who comes in a little later in the movie, and he starts throwing scripture out there.
Yep.
It's like, wow, okay, so what?
But he's the really evil one.
Right. Is he evil, though, or is he just crazy?
Well, you have to wonder if there's an underlying thing here where are they all killers? Because Horace mentions that he's wanted by the police, and Saul mentions that his brother and sister killed his other sister.
Yeah.
So even the very religious woman could be a crazy murderer.
Right. There's just so much going on in this family. It's absolutely bizarre.
Now, the genre of this film is definitely horror, but there's bits and pieces of comedy and romance thrown in there. Did you feel that was a benefit or a detraction from this film?
In the hands of any skilled writer, any genre can blend together seamlessly. And it never feels like a tonal mismatch. Especially in the beginning, leading in as I was getting to know the characters, this felt like what would happen if either, say, Noel Coward, Oscar Wilde, or George Bernard Shaw were to write a horror story. And because the dialogue is exceptionally witty, and the jokes don't feel unintentional. Actually, there's a lot of bits which I thought were incredibly funny, but they felt definitely in character.
Listen, why should we bother about the lamp? Let us wait here for a few minutes and then go back and say that we couldn't find it. or that it's broken.
I can't see the point.
Yes, but why should we trouble about the lamp if we don't want to?
But we said we'd get it, so why shouldn't we get it?
Yes, but why should we if we don't want to, and I don't want to?
But this is absurd. Did you hear that?
It didn't take away from the atmosphere that the film is trying to build. No one probably would have thought of the notion of making a horror story with humorous elements to it. And I will say that's what makes The Old Dark House a bit more memorable to me. So I'm really glad they did it, to be honest. For a film as old as this one is, and with a lot of techniques that have been refined over the generations, the fact that I was still taken off guard speaks volumes for the man's technique and his grasp of lighting and of camera placement. It's staggering that stuff like this still can be learned from to this very day.
Virtually every character in this movie needs to have a drink to deal with everything that's going on. You got Horace, who goes, "I like gin." Then you have the romantic couple who sneak off to the barn to go chug whiskey. Everyone needs a drink. So what did you pair with this movie?
Since this film had a bit of an emphasis on either gin or whiskey, I decided, you know what, let's ride the wave and let's go with the whiskey. And here's the thing, I'm also a fan of cocktails. So with this particular brand of whiskey, I just grabbed a random brand off the wall. I also mixed in a little bit of iced tea.
Well, we figured it's a movie about a scary house, so we might as well try another house for our beer. We have the Genesee Brew House Grund Geist Pale Ale. Grund Geist is a type of hop. I've never tried it, so let's give it a shot.
Charles.
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 Charles. It's a little sweet.
I'm definitely getting honey malts from this one.
Yeah, I taste a lot of honey in that. Now, this beer features Grundgeist hops, which is apparently a new German hop. My only problem with this beer is I can't quite taste the hops. I get a lot of malt, and I would have loved to have had more of an encounter with this new hop, which I'd never heard of.
There's a subtle bitterness there. It tastes like a German beer.
Yeah.
But the malt definitely shines through. It's got a real biscuity quality to it, and it's great on a hot summer day like today.
Yeah, I mean, the flavor is outstanding. This is a beer I would drink over and over again. I just wish I could taste more of the hops, but as an individual beer, it is delicious and
nutritious.
Probably.
And you know what? It's actually a wonderful combination. The tea actually blends really well with the whiskey. It's very smooth. The whiskey isn't overbearing, and the tea does just the right amount of justice to kind of cut it a bit to make it have a nice smooth flavor going down. And there's actually a soupçon of lemon in this tea that just happened to come with it that blends even more so and actually gives it a nice little minor kick of flavor.
Thank you so much for once again having us on your show. It's always a treat. You could say it's a delicacy. And it's nice to know that there are hosts out there in the world that aren't arsonists or murderers, and you're definitely one of those hosts. We hope.
So to the good people at Review and Brew, thank you very much for joining us once again on Rare Delicacies.
So thank you so much for having us on your show. We'll see you next time. Adios.
Keep your eye on Review and Brew's channel for the entire month of October, as they're going to have some incredible coverage for the Halloween season. And of course, keep it here on Narcotic Casserole as we unveil a whole bunch of other obscure Halloween delights in the month to come. For the Old Dark House, this one is truly on the menu with a lovely side.
Can we just make a quick point and say that roast beef looked delicious? Even though it's like grainy and black and white, you have this gray slab of meat. They still made it look delicious.
Have a potato.